Hi, thank you so much for watching the last video. All the reactions, I read every single one of them. It was amazing experience for the first time. It was almost like sending out a letter for anyone who wants to read it and receiving all these letters back as a reaction, which was really cool. It's almost like, yeah, kind of like a pen friend, the old school thing. But I very much enjoyed it. And in today's video, I wanted to talk about resentment and forgiveness. Two topics that have been very prevalent in my life. Some of you might recognize that. But yeah, today's video, I want to go dive deep a little bit into my youth, because in some things I'm still very much dealing with, but the process of forgiving myself was by far the most difficult things that I'm still doing. I'm still in the middle of it. It's not like um, I'm completely forgiven or I feel completely forgiven. There are still pieces of me that I still blame myself for. But yeah, this kind of all started in my youth, because for a big part of my youth, I resented my father. I hated him. Um, yeah, this was a very different time. My father and I, we are very different now. And it also took me a while until I was 19 that I realized that I wasn't really blaming my father. I was in reality blaming myself all that time. But I was just projecting it outward. I did not know how to communicate. I did not know how, um, to translate my feelings into words. I didn't know how to express that. So I was always just bottling up, and using my father as a scapegoat. Yeah, that that was quite an experience, because, well, back in the day, when before that all happened, before I resented my father, I've always loved him. I still love him, and back then, even when I resented him, I also loved him, which makes it quite confusing. So in that time, I was practicing judo from a very young age, and my father was my coach and my trainer. And besides that, I had another trainer who I trained with, for competition judo. And this was really the place where I wanted to be seen. I wanted to be recognized. I wanted to be like the number one. So I would always be part of the conversation, so to say. That I always knew that, like, hey, I'm here. I'm good enough. And I think that was one of the core beliefs that I was dealing with and still am dealing with, is this belief of not being good enough. And for me, it started with judo back in the day. So, yeah, that came to a pause when I was 18. I was in my final years of high school. We had just only a couple of months to go until the finals, and we just finished a bunch of like big tests, and we had a party to celebrate to kind of alleviate the pressure. And yeah, you know how it goes. But at that party, I got the call from my mother that my dad was in the hospital because he got a heart attack. And for anyone who has experienced something like that, well, it didn't matter how much I hated my father, the ground underneath me fell away. And when I was standing there next to his bed, he survived. Um, sure, it was really heavy, that moment. But looking back upon it, I didn't process it because the way how I perceived him didn't change. So I didn't really realize who I could have lost until like way later, like half a year ago. Yeah, like 7 years after. Yeah, the moment of incident. Yeah, 7 years after that was really when I started to process what happened. Like, oh, whoa, I could have lost my father. Whoa. So yeah, that when I was 18, that happened. Half a year later, I started to study. at the University of Utrecht, and yeah, I studied chemistry, but within half a year I quit. I didn't really know what to do with my life. I was so confused by all the choices I made for someone that I was not. So I was kind of living on autopilot for a long time. And yeah, the moment I quit my studies, that's when the guilt and the shame and the regrets really started to catch up with me. And as a result, that's when I started to realize, like, no, maybe I have blamed my father a bit too much. Maybe there's a bit more to the story than I imagined it to be. Maybe he wasn't as bad as how I imagined him that he was. So that's when the resentment started imploding inwards. Like, oh, I was always the problem, and yeah, that's when I got into a lot of self-loathing and made some choices which I ended up regretting very much. So yeah, that was a process, but it was one of the most relieving things, and one of the most intense things I've done is to forgive myself, because in 2023, all the anger that was starting to bottle up, or well, it was already bottling up, but the pressure started increasing. In 2023, it reached its climax. Like I said, I did not really know how to communicate about it, really ventilate. My emotional intelligence wasn't as good as it now, so I just sat with it, just sat with the anger, waiting for it to explode. And my walls were, well, the testimonies of that anger. So yeah. So in 2023, I had to admit to myself, like, okay, this is way too much. I had a pattern of trying to solve the problems alone. That was one thing, and I was surrounding myself with, even though they were my friends since I was very young, they were in the same type of behavior that I was. I wanted to change, but they were not ready for that yet. So I had to come to the conclusion, like, all right, I have dug a grave that I don't know how to get out of. I'm so deep in this hole that I cannot climb out of it anymore on my own. And I was also not surrounding myself with people who were assisting me in that process, so to say. There were friends, there were some type of support, but to really want to change, no. So I made the decision to go into addiction treatment, and that was kind of the end phase of all the anger and sadness and the whole thing, because I was self-medicating. I just did not know how to handle it, so then suppress it or try to run away. So I made that decision on August 23 to go into addiction treatment, and in during that journey I came to the realization of where my father came from, where my grandfather came from, well, in general, where my parents came from and where my grandparents came from. Because it explained a bit more of why I am the way I am. So what we did was we wrote down a life story from A to Z, everything that happened, like the good and the bad, no filter. Like, don't try to make it better than it was, and don't try to make it worse than it was. Just writing it down as it was. And that was part one of that process. And the second part was learning to relive it. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. That was an experience. Multiple experiences. Very much. Very nice emotions. So, yeah. In addiction treatment, I started to reflect and started to remember, like, pieces of, yeah, I didn't want to deal with at first, but I was determined to deal with the resentments that I had towards myself. So the first thing I did once I finished my first clinical treatment was tell my life story in front of my parents. Like anything and everything I did behind their backs, all the lies I told, the the manipulation, the lying. It's a lot of backstabbing and betraying, like to the people that I love the most, I hurt the most. So I wanted to get that out of me, like something that has been on my heart for, yeah, my entire life until that point. So yeah, after that, my parents, they decided to forgive me, and then the ball was thrown back towards me. And yeah, now you pondering with the question of how do I forgive myself? And one of the things that I learned about forgiveness is it's pretty much all about learning to shift the lens of perspective. Learning to see the story that I am judging, learning to see it differently. That that which that I am judging might not be the complete story. That I draw a conclusion of, yeah, basically an out of context clip out of a video, and that's where I put my conclusion to. Because I didn't see where my father came from. I didn't see where my grandfather came from. I didn't see how that influenced me. Because my father also didn't have the greatest childhood. And my grandfather, he was born in the war, in the Second World War. And during the rebuilding of civilization in the Netherlands. So learning to see things from a bigger perspective, that was one of the major components of forgiveness. The second part was acceptance. It's like learning to accept that which I really don't want to accept, because it felt like injustice, it felt like pain, and fear. And it almost felt counterintuitive to go against the grain or the flow, or however you want to say it. It was really counterintuitive to go against my own reasoning of why I felt bad. It was really difficult because I didn't see how, I suppose, yeah, I don't know why it was so difficult. But I do know by speaking it out in front of a stranger, everything I did was one of the most magical things I've ever experienced in my life. Like the deepest, darkest secrets that I did, where I hated myself for. The shit that I was basically projecting on my father. Like, that I was not good. The reasons why I found myself a piece of shit, why I hated myself, yada yada yada. And coming to an understanding of how did I get here, and speaking that story out in front of a stranger, because there's something very beautiful about sharing your life or our lives with a stranger, because there's no judgment, or very little at least. So I don't anticipate the criticism that I might get back. So for example, one of those deepest darkest secrets I didn't tell my father, for example, because I felt afraid of him judging me, which in reality is just me judging me, not my father judging me. In reality, it's the expectation of him judging me. He's a way different person now, and I have changed as well. So how does that work? Well, in reality, it was only expectations or only projections of what I experienced in the past. So in the past, my father judged me a lot about what I did, what I do, who I am. And this expectation was basically the pain that I experienced in the past, that combined that with fear, and it's this projection of what might happen if I do this again. So all these deepest, darkest secrets that I first, for the first time, wanted to speak out in front of strangers, I felt terrified. I did. I felt terrified, like that they would say to me what I've been saying for years to myself. That they would do to me that what I would have done to myself, and I felt terrified. I felt terrified to speak it out, but after that, it felt like an anvil fell off my shoulders, and something beautiful happened, because after that I could finally look myself in the eyes again, because I was expecting that they would say, well, like I said, that they would say everything that I said to myself for years, that they would do to me what I would have done if I had the chance to do so. um, and nothing like that happened, and all of a sudden I just broke out of my own perception of what happened, and I, for a second, I saw it from their perspective, like, shit, maybe I don't have to judge myself so harshly. And just this, it's almost like a seed was planted that day, like, wow, I don't have to judge myself anymore. Like, yes, I did that. Yes, was it wrong? Maybe. Yeah, likely. Would I do it again? No. No, I feel guilty and I regret it and I don't want to. I want to change. So then it's alright. I want to change. I don't want that to happen. So when a child, for example, stabs me, it's not that I'm gonna stab that child back in retaliation for, oh, look at what you did to me. Like, I'm gonna do it to you. No. I take the knife from the child and I teach the child better. I forgive him. So that's kind of what I started to do with myself, is starting to see myself as a child again. And yeah, I started to learn about the great masters of this world who are way better at forgiving than I am. People that I could look up to and people that I could learn from. Like, so for example, when you want to learn about willpower and dedication and stuff, you go to David Goggins, for example. If you want to know about life coaching and want to know about the myths and tricks, you go to Tony Robbins, for example. If you want to know about the deepest psychology or the high-end psychology, you go to, I don't know, Jordan Peterson or something. So there are all these men, women, teachers, sensei, who have all these things somewhat figured out, if not figured out. So there was always this type of character that kind of stuck with me, and that was the character of the wise old man. I love stories, and yeah. Yeah.